It's called Path of the Magistrati. And before I started writing this short story, I kind of filled out a lot of the world details first. And so this is kind of going over like that backstory, just to give you like a context for it. So here we go. So the world is based off of the Pangea supercontinent, right? It's it's massive and roughly diamond shaped. And it's a supercontinent, so the rest of the world is filled with water. At the age of the story, the western portion of the map, the eastern portion of the map has been sunk with only small islands remaining. The water is also rushed in, so much of the central area is taken over as well. So overall, about 40% of the landmass has been submerged in the current era of the story. Now, the world is roughly based off Earth's flora and fauna, but it will also have fantastical creatures added in. So the main locations of the stories are going to be the Western Kingdom and the Underdark. Those are going to be the two main general locations, general areas. The Western Kingdom is based off medieval times, but is run by the order-loving Sun Elves. The capital is a sprawling city of grand architecture, but at its center lies a great stepped pyramid that is much older than the rest of the city. The story, Path of the Magistrati, starts off with Mattheos at the southern edge of this kingdom, and he'll eventually be working his way towards the capital. The next short story that I'm going to write is going to be a whole nother set of characters, and this time it's going to be based on a Sun Elf paladin who starts off in the capital and then is venturing to the outskirts of the kingdom. So it would be opposite of what Mattheos is doing. And then in another short story I want to write with another group of characters, it takes place in the Underdark, right? And this is just like, underground caverns, caves, all that kind of stuff. And this is, a vast subterranean network of tunnels, caverns, and intricately carved out halls and quarters. This is the land of the Night Elves currently, but much of it was carved out before their time. Deep in the Underdark is the god of destructive chaos, Tenebrous Deus, and his corrupted minions. In a future short story set there, I hope to, he'll basically be the big bad guy overall coming in, but he won't be in the stories for a while. Now, the metaphysics and magic of my world. So it's kind of all based off that there are 4 aspects to reality, right? First of all, it's order and chaos, but then each order and chaos are split in half. So there is assertive order and supportive order, and then there's creative chaos and destructive chaos. So for reality to exist, there must be a balance of order and chaos, where order is light, passivity, fire, stability, and chaos is darkness, activity, and atrophy on creativity. Assertive order is focused around fire magic. It seeks to dominate and cleanse, but can also sustain and enliven. Supportive order is focused on light and nature magic. It seeks to stabilize everything that is currently. So it wants to keep things alive, help them grow and heal and defend them. Creative chaos is focused around reacting and adapting to everything, being in a flow state, and then also transmuting one thing into another, and then also breaking things that bind us, both mentally and physically. And then destructive chaos is focused around void magic. It seeks to suck in light, destroy, consume, and break down all order. The more you wield a certain type of magic, the more you bend yourself towards its aspect of reality, as well as putting more of that aspect into the world around you, right? So if you are an assertive order guy and you're just trying to do what's good for the state, right? You got to fight off the bad guys to keep, the order of your state. But then the more you're using this fire magic to help, fight the bad guys, the more aligned with assertive order you become. So basically the more fanatical. You basically become a fanatic of that one aspect of reality. And then also that energy is emanating out of you and around you. So even the very land itself will be turned more towards that one aspect. So obviously, when the bad guys are around doing their crazy destructive chaos magic, it's affecting the whole world, right? Making basically everything starts falling apart. right? But then also for the good guys, when they're doing all their good guy magic, it's also making the world more towards like a pure like tyrannical order, right? So it's kind of bad on both spectrums, which is why the main character, the Magistrati, is the balance of both. So yeah, the more magic you use, the more you lose of yourself, and the more fanatical you become to that one aspect. There are many ways to counter this, but one of the easy ways is just to meditate, clear your mind, center yourself, and then allow the energy to slowly dissipate that you've built up. So now we have the historical breakdown. So currently in my setting, there are 5 ages, with the story currently taking place in the 5th age. And then each age is ended by a cataclysm. So the first age is ruled by the primordial elves, and they are neutral aspected beings, capable of using both order and chaos. They build a great civilization, and then they realize that there's going to be a huge meteor coming to impact, right? So then a lot of them start to build underground, creating the Underdark. And then eventually the meteor hits, and causes the first cataclysm. The second age begins years later when some of those primordial elves emerge from the Underdark back to the surface world. In an effort to regrow the world, they create 3 demigods. Sol Invicta, the aspect of assertive order. Selene Meraki, the aspect of creative chaos. And Dear Halei, the aspect of supportive order. Each demigod, with the help of the primordial elves, then spawned their own race of new elf. So from Sol Invicta was created the Sun Elves, named the Solvife. From Selene Meraki, the Night Elves were created, named the Lu Navite. And from Deir Halei, the Wood Elves were created, and they are called the Driadie. So unknown at the time, there was also a 4th demigod created, which is Tenebris Deus, the aspect of destructive chaos. His evil eventually took over the Underdark and then spreads up to the surface world, and eventually corrupts all of the primordial elves. And then it turns them from the primordial elves into the evil Ma'alie. So in the final battle of the Second Age, the 3 aspects, the 3 demigods, sacrifice themselves to seal the darkness underground. And then after years of terrible battle, it's left the land scarred, and the new races of elves are now left for the first time without their demigods and without their primordial elf overseers, right? So it's like not the same kind of cataclysm as like a meteor impact, but it's like everything's changed, right, at the end of the Second Age. So the Third Age starts out with strife, because the elves that remained, the new races of elves, right, the Sun Elves, the Wood Elves, and the Night Elves, they can no longer harmonize and live together as they once had. And this is because the neutral aspected primordial elves were overseeing everything, and they helped nullify the fanaticism in each of the other elves, kind of helped everything harmonize instead of going towards their extremes. So in this new age, without that neutral influence, everything starts to fall apart. So the Wood Elves start sticking to their dense jungles and forests. The Night Elves start to spread out in small groups across the land, foregoing all civilization. And the Sun Elves want to bring back the old order. To do so, they decide to try to copy what their primordial elf overseers did, and they created new races. But they weren't nearly as proficient in this as the primordial elves, and so they weren't able to create more demigods, and then who then created like a powerful being like an elf. Instead, they just combined their life essence with that of the local fauna, creating simian-like humans, lizard-like Iruxi, and bird-like Arakoa. With these 3 new races as servants, the Sun Elves then were able to create a massive empire. So the High Priest, so yeah, this is the height of the Third Age, right, where the Sun Elf Empire has taken over most of the supercontinent, right? And so there is, at the northern, part of the map was the meteor impact, and then in the very center is the primordial elf pyramid, the first one that was ever built. And then in the west, east, and south are the other pyramids where the lesser elves were created. So the Sun Elf Empire was based out of the eastern pyramid. But then as they went and took over, there was like sub kings or, like high priests that controlled the area around the other pyramids, all in the name of the Sun Elf Emperor. But the high priest of the central pyramid, which was previously the primordial elves pyramid, started hearing voices. He thought it was, from Sol Invicta, their god, but really it was from Tenebris Deus, right? The deep evil from underneath the earth. So the current high priest was convinced to lower the power of the central pyramid, which then let the Ma'alieh queen come through. She broke through the ancient seal that had been placed at the end of during the Second Age. So she kills and then impersonates the high priest and then starts a rebellion against the Sun Elf Empire. After decades of war, the Sun Elf Emperor, calls for a meeting with the rebel leaders and attempts to assassinate them all. In this attempt, though, it turns out that the high priest has to reveal her true nature, being the Ma'alieh queen. And this threw both sides into chaos and confusion, right? So she is the aspect of destructive chaos. So it just like sows destruction and chaos just by being there. But also all the rebels now just realized like, oh God, we were just servants of the evil queen. And so everything kind of got crazy. But then they all kind of joined up and said, okay, we got to get rid of this evil. So then they all go back to the central pyramid. So as the elves unified and tried to eliminate the Ma'alieh threat once more, they stormed the central pyramid. But by then, Tenebris Deus's avatar was atop the great central pyramid and was causing massive earthquakes towards the Sun Elf capital in the east. He was eventually defeated, but not before the earthquakes caused the eastern pyramid to explode and rip the land apart. So this was the ending of the Third Age, the Cataclysm. And this caused the east and the center of the map to be flooded, submerging that 40% of the supercontinent. And then after this is the dawn of the Fourth Age. And this age begins with the surviving elves in a tentative peace with each other. And this is because the destruction of 2 of the 4 pyramids that kept the darkness underground was no longer possible. So this means evil can just keep coming up from the Underdark and harassing the surface civilization. So this causes the elves to become more martial, and also their magic waned a little bit, so they had to become more martial to make up for it. And so in doing so, they created new orders of warriors that combined physical prowess with magic. So the Sun Elves created the Paladins, the Wood Elves created the Guardians, and the Night Elves created the Magistrati. These new forces beat back the forces of evil to the cold and desolate north, where the meteorite impact was, or back down into the Underdark. The Magistrati are the most effective at this because, like the primordial elves of old, they are able to find a way to use both order and chaos magic. So like some of the other elves will give in and be broken down by fighting destructive chaos, but because the Night Elves are already an aspect of chaos, being creative chaos, they're able to withstand this better. So as the darkness recedes, the elves and the new races, the humans, Aruxi and Arakoa, flourish. But the Sun Elves sought to bring back the greatness of the old empire, right? The Sun Elves are always striving for that assertive order, right? They kind of want to like go back to the greatness of the time that was before. But the Sun Elves sought to bring back the greatness of old by creating a unified empire again. They created 2 bastions of power, so around the western and southern pyramids, and then they expand out from there. But as they do, mighty leaders rise up within the Night and Wood Elf societies. They fight the Sun Elves back into their strongholds, and then after many years of fighting, all the elves kind of proclaim they're sick of fighting and just wish to be left alone, right? And by this time, they had already scoured the surface world of most of the evil forces. And so it's been years and decades, generations of constant warfare. So the Wood Elves get everybody to agree that the dense forests and deep jungles are theirs alone, and they must not be disturbed. The Night Elves, whose Magistrati had already led the way in clearing out the Underdark, decided they would just move there permanently, as long as none came down to bother them. This left the Sun Elves to govern the three new races and take over the surface again. So though this age's ending was not like a catastrophe, like a severe devastation like the others, it is still a severe breaking up of things because it marks the first time that the elves give up on the dream of living together in harmony, like when they were first created. And this brings us to the current age, the age of our stories, or the fifth age. The Sun Elves still rule over their two large kingdoms based off the Western and Southern pyramids. The Night Elves have been living in the Underdark for generations, and the Wood Elves have not been seen in the same amount of time, right? They're left in their deep jungles and forests. Many of the new races, so the humans, Uruxi and Arakoa, serve the Sun Elves. But these new races, they're much weaker and not as magically gifted as the elves, or as long-lived, but they do multiply a lot faster. So in this age, the elves basically never are able to reach the population heights that they had before, where these newer races are just exploding population-wise. So though the Sun Elves still do control these newer races within their kingdoms, the greater world has kind of been filled up with these humans, Uruxi and Arakoa. So now the current setting of the stories. The Path of the Magistrati is set in the Fifth Age, where Mattathios begins as a newly appointed Magistrati. He's starting off at the southern edge of the Western Sun Elf Kingdom and will work his way towards the capital. In my next short story, I will introduce a new group of characters centered around a Sun Elf Paladin, who starts in the Western capital and journeys to the outskirts of the kingdom to train his initiate in the Paladin Order. The short story I have after that is a new group of characters. They'll be in the Underdark, centered around a supposed reincarnation of one of the demigods, and in the stirrings of Tenebrasteus underground. My initial idea was to show the differences in ideology of Paladin versus Magistrati. So basically like assertive order versus creative chaos. The Paladins are a symbol of order and authority, where the Magistrati are the balance. So the Magistrati's journey to the capital will be a mirror contrast by the Paladin's journey away from the capital. It's kind of a fantasy exploration of my philosophical beliefs put into action. So I hope to write many short stories in this setting, fleshing out many characters, societal structures, belief systems, and more. I have a rough idea of the great conflict ahead, and it's going to all lead up to basically a cataclysm, just how every age before has had a cataclysm that ends it. So the Magistrati character is based off of a Liberator Cause champion from Pathfinder 2e, mixed with fighting style influences from The Witcher 3, especially the heavy like sign magic Griffin School fighting style. A lot of prayers and litanies of the Magistrati are based off my personal philosophy that's influenced by Stoicism, Taoism, and esotericism. And Mattathios will be the main character overall, but I want to explore many characters and their points of view. So this was just a quick overview of the races, the world, the history, and the magic of my story. I have much more detailed stuff on the history of each age, the conflicts, the catastrophes, the golden ages. I also have more detailed stuff written on each race, their pluses and minuses, their societal structures. I have a lot written on the Magistrati order and what they're all about, what their fighting style is, their magic use, their tools. And I have a lot of Mattathios' personal backstory written out, right? His birth in the Underdark, his life as a mercenary on the surface, and then his turn to a Magistrati. This can all be in future videos or just explored through the short stories that I am hoping to write. So please let me know if you'd like to hear more about any specific topic we've gone over today. And thank you very much for listening. Have a great day.